All right, then, let's look at a one-step equation. Okay, so in example one here, we see um, the question that I have to the left here is what is happening to the variable g? What are we doing to g? Okay, essentially all we're doing here is we are trying to do something to both sides of the equation so that we isolate or we get the variable by itself so that we uncover what the value of g is. We have an equation here. G is unknown right now, and it's just one value. So what we do is we apply these properties of equality, this idea of let's do something to one side of the equation and let's do it to the other side of the equation so that we get G by itself and we can uncover the value easily. Okay. Some of you might be familiar with, drawing a line down here. I usually don't do this, but if that helps you, you have one side of the equation and you have the other side of the equation, and we're simply going to mirror our operations on both. So what is happening to G here? Well, G, we're subtracting 20. We're just subtracting 25. And essentially what we're doing here is we're going to do the inverse operation to that. So if we're subtracting 25, we're going to do the opposite. And the opposite of subtracting 25 is adding 25. So, we're going to take this action on both sides. So we're going to say plus 25 to this side. And also to this expression, we're going to add 25 to that side. And essentially what we're trying to do is get this to 0. We're trying to get it to that. So we have negative 25 and we have plus 25, and that's going to cancel, right? Because that is 0. And what we're left with here is G equals, and then on the right-hand side, we're just going to go ahead and add those things together as well. 113 plus 25, so we have 138. G is equal to 138. There's my answer, okay? If I wanted to check my answer in any equation, you learn that, look, if I have an equation here, G minus 25 equals 113, and if I take my answer G is 138 and I plug it back in, it better make sense, right? So if I take 138 minus 25, is this true? And the answer is yes. 138 minus 25 is 113, and I know this is my answer to my equation. So that's all we're doing with a one-step equation is we're taking one step, we're doing one thing to both sides of the equation to get my variable by itself. And that's it. Flip the page over. Let's look at this one right here. 27 plus k equals 30. Now, again, these are very, very basic. You could look at that equation and just say, well, 27 plus what is equal to 30? And if I was in class right now, you all would say, oh, the answer is 3, right? But same thing here. We're asking ourselves, what are we doing to k here? Well, if we look at k, the variable, we're just adding 27 to it. So let's go ahead and do the opposite of that, right? Let's subtract 27 on this side. If you want to put your line here, you can. We're going to subtract 27 from the other side as well. And you can show your work. I'm still going to encourage you to show the one step on your paper because eventually we're going to get to two-step equations, and then we're going to get to three-step and multi-step and lots of steps here. And you want to show the progression of what you did for your equations. So subtract 27, and we get k equals 30 minus 27 is 3, so you get k equals 3. Let's look at jump down to example 4 now. Okay, example 4, we have 3/8 times x equals 9/4. How do we get x by itself here? Well, what you could do is you could say, well, what are we doing to x? We are multiplying by 3/8. So let's just think about what we're doing to x. We are multiplying by 3/8. I could ask you, well, what's the inverse? What's the opposite of multiplying by 3/8? And someone might say, well, dividing by 3/8, right? So as long as I divide by 3/8, then I would do the opposite, right? But there's a little problem here because we have to think about what does that mean to divide by 3/8? And we did these fractions in our 2.0 packet, right? If we divide by 3/8, what is that the same thing as doing? Let's rephrase dividing by 3/8 as multiplying by the reciprocal. Multiplying by the reciprocal of 3/8 is 8/3. So let me make this clear. What are we going to do to both sides of this equation? Well, someone might say, let's divide by 3/8. Someone else might say, no, that's not right. We're going to multiply by 8/3 because you just multiply by the reciprocal. Both of them would be right because they both mean the same thing. Now, this down here multiplying by 8/3 would make our problem on paper pencil easier because that's something that we can do. So what are we going to do on our paper? Well, I'm going to take this and I'm going to take the reciprocal here, 8/3, and I'm going to multiply it on the left. On the right hand side, I'm going to do the same thing, multiply by 8/3. So what happens here? 8/3 times 3/8. Look at that. This is one of our properties from chapter 1. I'm taking something and multiplying it by its reciprocal. 8/3 times 3/8. Well, that's 1. It's always going to go to 1. So this is going to be 1x equals. And then we're going to have, multiplying our fractions here. And if I multiply across, I would get 72/12. 9 times 8 and 4 times 3. By the way, I could also cross reduce here. That would probably be the easiest way to do this. So 7, but nevertheless, 72 divided by 12, you would realize that's just 6. We can reduce that to 6. So my answer here is x equals 6. So let's look at another one. Look at the one to the right. Okay, 42 equals -14 y. What are we doing to y here? Well, no, first of all, the variable is on the right-hand side. That's not a big deal. You can have your variable on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. If you want to switch it and rewrite it, you could. Don't need to. So here's a case where I'm taking y and I'm multiplying by -14. So I'm multiplying by -14, and I can say, well, what's the opposite of multiplying by -14? Well, that would be dividing by -14. Now here, on both sides of the equation, most people would just show the division. They would say divide by -14 right here, and then if I do it to one side, I'm going to do it to the other side. Divide by -14 on the left-hand side. You could Someone else in class might say, well, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal because I'm going to multiply by -1/14 on both sides. And technically that would be the exact same thing. But many people just show the division here because it's easier to see on your paper. So again, doesn't really matter. This is the one I'll go with because it's just easier to see. But -14 divided by -14, right? That's just 1. That's going to be 1y equals 42 divided by 14. Well, that's 3, -3. And so my final answer here is -3 equals y. Or we can switch that, y equals -3. There's my answer for that one-step equation. So there are your basics of the one-step equations. You're just thinking about how do I do the opposite of the operation that is applied to my variable, and you can get your answer there.